My name is Wilma Bryant, and I'm 29 years old. For most of my adult life, I've been the one everyone in my family calls when something breaks, when bills are due, or when emotions spill over. I used to take it as a badge of honor, the dependable daughter. But somewhere along the line, it turned into a leash. That leash finally snapped the night before my flight to Chicago. I was sitting on my couch, suitcase zipped, laptop humming as I reviewed my conference notes. My boyfriend, Evan Ross, leaned in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You've checked that car lock 3 times, he teased gently. "I know," I sighed, "but you remember last time." He did. Everyone did. The time my parents let my sister Emily borrow my old car, and she rear-ended someone while scrolling through her phone. I paid over $4,000 in repairs for an accident I wasn't even in. Mom called it a learning experience for Emily. Dad said, "She's family." I remember replying, "So am I." Now I drove a 2021 black Toyota Highlander. My pride, my independence, the one thing I owned outright. I'd saved for years to pay it off. I called it the only thing that listens to me. It got me to work, to late-night groceries, to therapy, and back. I kept it spotless, a tiny bubble of control in a family that respected none. Before bed, I called my mom, just to be clear. "Hey, Mom," I said. "I'm flying out early tomorrow for the conference. I'll be gone till Monday. The house and the car are locked up, so no one needs to stop by, okay?" Her voice came light and dismissive. "Of course, sweetheart. Why would we need your car?" It wasn't a question. It was a lie, wearing a smile. Something in me wanted to believe her. Something older and more tired didn't. So I added, "I mean it, Mom. Not as a joke, not for errands, not for emergencies. Last time was the last time." There was silence, a sigh, then, "You're still holding on to that? You really need to learn forgiveness, Wilma. Family doesn't keep score." "Maybe not," I said quietly. "But family shouldn't steal either." I hung up before she could reply. The next morning, I locked the Highlander in my driveway, dropped a spare key with my neighbor Jason, strictly for emergencies, and left for the airport. Evan drove me, holding my hand most of the way. "You worry too much," he said with that easy calm of his. "Your mom's not going to risk something like that again." I smiled, but didn't answer. I had this pulse of dread I couldn't name. 4 days later, in the middle of a networking brunch at the Chicago Hilton, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. I finally answered, excusing myself from the table. "This is Officer Barrett with Travis County," a firm voice said. "Is this Wilma Bryant?" My heart dropped. "Yes?" "Your vehicle, a black Toyota Highlander, was towed this morning in Galveston for obstructing a private driveway. Can you confirm who was driving it?" "Galveston," my voice cracked. "That's 4 hours from Austin. The people in the car didn't match the registration. A woman claiming to be your mother said she had permission to use it." I could hear background chatter, a radio, maybe a seagull. My world tilted. I felt the room's noise fade until all I could hear was my own breathing. "She's lying," I whispered. "I didn't give anyone permission. Not my mom, not my sister, no one." "Then I'll need to process this as unauthorized use," the officer said. "Potentially vehicle theft. Are you sure you want to proceed?" I looked out the tall hotel window, sunlight reflecting off the skyline. People below were laughing, talking, living, while my stomach turned to ice. "Yes," I said finally. "Report it stolen." Hours later, I got the full picture. Emily had secretly copied the key months ago. My parents had used my garage code, one they weren't supposed to have anymore, to get in. They packed beach chairs, coolers, and even brought along my golden retriever, Milo, who I'd left with them to dog sit for the weekend. It was a full family vacation, in my car, without a call, without a text, without permission. The towing bill was $1,900. The officer said they'd been parked all weekend in front of someone's driveway, ignoring notes from the homeowner until the police arrived. When asked, my mom had said cheerfully, "Oh, it's fine. My daughter said we could use it. It's a family car." When I hung up, my tea had gone cold. I could feel my hands trembling. Evan reached for me. "Wilma, what happened?" I laughed. That strange, hollow laugh you make when disbelief and fury collide. "They took my car," I said. "They actually did it." Evan's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "They what?" "They broke into my house, took my car, and went on vacation." My voice cracked. "They even took Milo." He swore softly, but I was already pacing. I told them not to touch it, not even as a joke. "Do you want to fly home?" I shook my head. No, let them deal with the police. I'm done cleaning up their messes. That night in my hotel room, I sat by the window and watched the Chicago lights shimmer against the lake. My phone buzzed again and again. Mom, Dad, Emily, home. I didn't answer a single one. I could imagine the scene. Their car impounded, their trip ruined, two crying kids, and my mother spinning stories about betrayal and ingratitude. I didn't care, not anymore. For once, I wanted them to sit in the silence they'd made, to taste the consequences they always fed me. My last thought before I turned my phone off was simple and sharp. If they could steal from me once, they could do it again. And they would. But next time, they'd take much more than my car. When the police report came through the next morning, I was sitting in my hotel lobby with a stale croissant and a cup of burnt coffee. The message read, "Vehicle recovered, occupants detained and released pending confirmation. You may contact Galveston PD for details." I stared at it, half in disbelief, half in grim satisfaction. They'd been caught. Officer Barrett later told me that my parents, Emily, her two kids, and her boyfriend were pulled over on I-10, the Highlander full of beach sand, snacks, and screaming children. When the officers asked who owned the car, my dad said proudly, "It's our daughters. We're family." They weren't arrested. The police simply impounded the car. My parents and Emily were left on the side of the highway with their luggage dumped onto the gravel. I imagined the look on my mother's face, that particular blend of outrage and wounded pride. It almost made me smile. By the time they made it back to Austin, $300 poorer after a rideshare that Emily's boyfriend had to pay for, my phone had over 40 missed calls. Each voicemail was worse than the last. "You're being ridiculous, Wilma. We didn't hurt anyone. You owe us respect." And the inevitable, "We gave you life, and this is how you treat us?" No apologies, no shame, just entitlement, dressed up as love. When I landed back in Austin 2 days later, I didn't even stop at home. I went straight to the impound lot. The man behind the counter looked me over like he'd already heard the story. He slid a clipboard across the counter. "That'll be $9,900, Ms. Bryant." Ms. I signed, paid, and followed him through the gates to my car. The Highlander looked like a stranger. Sand covered the seats. One of the cup holders was sticky with juice. A long scratch cut across the passenger door. The air reeked of sunscreen and fast food. And on the back seat floor, a crumpled juice box leaked slowly into the carpet. I stood there for a long time. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was tired in a way that lived in my bones. The man gave me the keys and said softly, "Family, huh?" I didn't answer. That evening, I drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't text, didn't call. I just parked in their driveway, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment, listening to the tick of the cooling motor. Through the front window, I could see them. My mom wiping down the counter, my dad laughing at something on TV, Emily scrolling on her phone, like nothing had happened. When I rang the doorbell, my mom opened it with a bright, fake smile. "Oh, honey," she said, "we were wondering when you'd finally come around." "Come around?" I repeated. Dad leaned in from the living room. "Figured you'd cool off by now," he chuckled. "No need to drag the police into family business." I stepped inside. Milo, my dog, was lying on the couch, tail thumping. The sight of him was the only warmth in that entire house. "Sit down," Mom said, waving her hand. "We can talk about this calmly." "No," I said, voice steady. "I just came to say one thing." Emily didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, here we go," she muttered. I turned to them, heart pounding. "You broke into my house, stole my car, took my dog, lied to the police, and left me with a $900 bill. And now you're acting like I'm the problem?" Mom's expression hardened. "Watch your tone, Wilma. We're your parents. You owe us for everything we've done for you." That line, "you owe us," landed like a knife. I'd heard it my whole life, every time I tried to say no. Dad folded his arms. "You think you're better than us now? With your fancy job and your car?" Emily snorted. "It's just a car, Wilma. You're being dramatic." I felt the air leave my lungs. For a second, I almost laughed. Almost. "It's not about the car," I said quietly. "It's about respect. Something you keep demanding but never giving." Mom stepped closer, eyes cold. "If you're done being ungrateful, maybe you can I cut her off. "I'm done, all right. Done helping, done paying, done pretending this is normal." They froze. No one had ever heard me speak like that before. I continued, my voice shaking but steady. "No more favors. No more money. No more Wilma will fix it. You made it clear exactly how little you respect me. I'm not rewarding that anymore." That's when they finally snapped. Mom's voice rose to a shrill pitch. "You're abandoning your family, Dad shouted. "We raised you. This is how you repay us?" Emily rolled her eyes. "God, you're exhausting." But I didn't stay to listen. I walked to the door, Milo padding after me. I looked back one last time and said, "You taught me that love has conditions. Consider this my return policy." Then I left. That night, I turned off my phone, locked the door, and lay in bed with Milo curled beside me. The silence felt heavy but clean. For the first time in months, I slept straight through the night. The next morning, the voicemail started again. Aunts, cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them reciting the same script my mother must have handed out like party favors. Family is messy, but it's worth it. Don't throw it away over a car. They had no idea what that car really represented. It wasn't just metal and paint. It was boundaries. It was mine. And by stealing it, my family hadn't just crossed a line. They'd erased it. For the next few days, my house was quiet. Eerily so. No phone calls, no messages, no knocking on my door. Even Milo seemed unsettled by the calm padding between rooms, as if waiting for another storm to hit. I knew better than to trust that silence. In my family, quiet never meant peace. It meant planning. Sure enough, the first ripple came through social media. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years posted a photo of my parents' backyard with a caption that read, "Family always finds its way back together." I wasn't in the picture, of course, but the comments were full of sympathy for my mom. One relative wrote, "Can't believe Wilma turned on her own parents." Another added, "All over a car? Shameful." By that evening, my phone started buzzing again. My aunt left a voicemail saying, "You've always been too sensitive, sweetheart. Your mom told us you called the police on her? Why would you do that?" I deleted it. Then came another and another. They all told the same story. My parents had borrowed my car, I'd overreacted, and now they were heartbroken. They left out the part about breaking into my home, lying to the police, and leaving me with a $1,900 bill. I'd seen this movie before. Every time something went wrong, my mom rewrote the script until she was the victim and I was the villain. But this time, I wasn't staying silent. I sat at my kitchen table that night and typed out a group message to the few relatives who had reached out. Here's what really happened. They entered my house without permission, took my car using a copied key, lied to police, and left me with repair costs. I've attached the towing invoice, photos of the damage, and the report number. I won't be taking calls about this. I'm done being the scapegoat. Then I hit send. It felt good, like exhaling after years of holding my breath. Within an hour, my Uncle Ray called. "Wilma," he said quietly, "I had no idea. Your mom made it sound like you'd gone crazy." I almost laughed. She's always been good at storytelling. A few cousins texted too, some apologetic, some stunned. One even admitted that Mom had pulled similar stunts before. The tide was finally turning, and my mother hated losing control. A few days later, it began again, this time in person. I came home from work one evening to find both my parents standing in my driveway. My mom waved cheerfully like we were old friends. My dad gave me a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Wilma," Mom called. "We thought we'd drop by. Let's just move on from all this nonsense." I didn't get out of my car. I rolled the window down halfway. "You're trespassing." Dad sighed dramatically. "You're making this worse than it needs to be." I said, I repeated slowly, "Leave my property." Mom's smile faltered. "Honey, we're family. You can't just cut us out of your life over a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said flatly. "It was theft." Her face hardened. "You've become so cold. Evan's been a bad influence, hasn't he?" That name hit like a spark. Evan, my one calm place in all of this. He had kept his distance from the mess, but even he was starting to see how deep it went. I pointed toward the street. "Leave, now. If you show up again, I'll call the police and file a restraining order." For a long moment, they just stood there. Then Mom's expression twisted into something unfamiliar, a quiet fury she tried to disguise as pity. "You'll regret this," she said. Then they walked away. 2 nights later, I got an email from Emily. It started politely. "We all love you, Wilma. You're just misunderstanding things." Then it shifted. "You humiliated us by getting the cops involved. You're making Mom sick with worry. We didn't mean any harm. We just thought you'd understand. You're turning into one of those cold people who care more about money than family." And then came the line that revealed everything. "You think you're better than us just because you're not struggling like we are." I read that sentence over and over until the words blurred. That was the truth behind all their actions. They didn't feel guilty for taking from me. They felt entitled to it. I wasn't family to them anymore. I was a resource. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glow of the screen. This isn't about forgiveness, I thought. It's about ownership. When Evan came by that night, he found me sitting at the table, laptop still open. They're not going to stop, I told him. He rubbed the back of his neck. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to close every door they can still walk through. Evan nodded. You sure you're ready for that? I looked at him, really looked, and realized I was. They crossed every boundary I had, I said. It's time I make sure there aren't any left for them to cross. I didn't know it yet, but that resolve would uncover something even worse. Something that proved my family's betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial. And when I found out what they'd done next, I stopped calling them family altogether. A week passed before the next betrayal surfaced. It started small, a faint ripple in the background of my daily routine. I was at work, half listening to a conference call, when I noticed an email alert from my bank. Unusual activity detected on your account. My stomach tightened. I hadn't used that particular account in years. A dusty old joint savings I'd opened when I was 19, back when my parents convinced me it was smart to keep family connected financially. I clicked the notification. My breath caught. 5 small withdrawals, all under $200, all traced to the same IP address, my parents' home. The total came to $590. Not much, but that wasn't the point. The message was clear. Boundaries meant nothing to them. Even after everything, they still felt entitled to take. That night, I drove straight home from work, hands clenched around the steering wheel. Milo whined softly from the back seat, sensing my tension. When I got inside, I found a letter waiting in my mailbox. Thick envelope, familiar handwriting. My father's. The first few lines read like an apology. We never meant to upset you. Family shouldn't fight. Your mother's heart can't take this stress. But by the third paragraph, the tone shifted. We had no choice but to use what was available to cover the towing bill and some expenses. You'll understand once things calm down. My pulse pounded in my ears. They were admitting it, stealing from me again, and dressing it up as necessity. I tore the letter in half, then in half again. The next morning, I called the bank. The representative's voice was calm, almost clinical, as she confirmed what I already knew. Since the account is technically joint, there's little we can do without mutual consent, Ms. Bryant. Mutual consent? I snapped. They took my money without permission. I understand, she said gently, but the law doesn't distinguish intention when the account is shared. I hung up before my temper could spill. It wasn't just the money, it was the violation. Again. Every step forward I took, they found a way to drag me back into their chaos. I closed my laptop, grabbed my phone, and called Evan. He picked up on the first ring. Wilma? They drained my account, I said, my voice shaking. The old one, the one I forgot about. Silence, then. You want me to come over? I hesitated. Yeah, please. When he arrived, I showed him the letter. He read it once, then again, disbelief flickering across his face. They actually wrote this down. They think they're untouchable, I muttered. Every time I draw a line, they move it. Evan exhaled slowly. You need to make it official this time, Wilma. Legally. Lawyer, bank, everything. He was right, and for once I didn't hesitate. That evening, I started making calls. I closed the joint account. I removed my name from every shared emergency fund, every family subscription, every quiet little tie that still connected us. I even canceled the Amazon order that automatically shipped Emily's kids snacks every month. Click, delete, done. Each click felt like cutting another invisible chain, but it still wasn't over. 3 days later, I was at work when the front desk called. Wilma, there's a woman here asking for you. Says she's your emergency contact. My chest tightened. What's her name? Emily Bryant. I froze. Send her away, now. But before I could hang up, I heard her voice echoing down the hallway. Loud, dramatic, familiar. She has to see me. Our mother's sick. She's in the hospital. Heart problems. It's serious. The entire office went silent. I stepped out just long enough for her to see me. Emily's expression softened when she spotted me, like she'd already won. Wilma, she said, feigning tears, Mom's not doing well. Please stop this. You're making it worse. I stared at her for a long moment. What hospital? Her lips parted. St. Joseph's. I nodded slowly. Good, because I'll call her doctor myself. She blinked, caught. Wilma, I'm just trying to... Leave, I said, or I'll call security. Her eyes narrowed, the tears evaporating. You've become cruel. No, I said softly, just awake. She stormed out, muttering about how I was destroying the family. I didn't chase her. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called Mom's doctor. The nurse on the other end sounded puzzled. Heart problems? She repeated. No, she's fine. She had a routine checkup last week. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a while, gripping my phone until my knuckles turned white. They had faked a heart condition, just to manipulate me into forgiveness. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat at my kitchen counter, staring at the letter pieces scattered like ashes. Evan sat across from me, silent. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. They're never going to stop unless I make them. He nodded. Then make them. I opened my laptop again. This time, I wasn't closing accounts. I was preparing documents, legal ones. Power of attorney revocation, emergency contact removal, access code changes. Every single thread they'd ever used to pull me back, gone. As I hit print, a strange feeling washed over me. Not peace, not relief, something stronger. It was reclamation. But even as I sealed the envelopes and sent them off, part of me knew they wouldn't let go quietly. And I was right. 2 weeks later, when I thought it was over, they found a new way to hurt me, one I never saw coming. 2 weeks of silence. That's how long it lasted. 2 short, blissful weeks where my phone stayed dark, my doorstep stayed empty, and Milo slept soundly through the night without jumping at every sound. I started to believe, for a moment, that it was over. Then my cousin Lauren sent me a message. Hey, Wilma, are you okay? Just checking in. I got invited to the family barbecue this weekend. Your name wasn't on the list. Thought that was weird. Attached was a photo. It was an old family picture, one I remembered vividly. I was in the middle, holding Milo as a puppy. My parents were on either side, Emily behind me, grinning. Except in the version Lauren sent, I wasn't there. They had cropped me out completely. The background filled the space where I'd been, like I'd never existed. That weekend, Lauren texted again. They actually went through with it. Everyone's there, except you. She sent another photo, my parents standing beside a familiar face. My neighbor, Jason, the same man who'd held my spare key for emergencies. Mom's arm was around his shoulder. The caption on her Facebook post read, "Grateful for family, the ones who stay." My throat went dry. Dad raised a glass in the photo. Emily tagged Jason with a smiling emoji. It was surreal, like watching my own replacement step into my life, my space, my role. Jason texted me later that night, his message apologetic and awkward. They invited me out of nowhere, said you wouldn't mind. I didn't realize what it was about until I got there. Your mom introduced me as the one who helps them now. I read his words twice, the edges of my vision blurring. It wasn't enough for them to steal from me. Now they were rewriting me. The next morning, an envelope appeared on my doorstep. No return address. Just my name in my mother's looping handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One last chance to make things right before it's too late. No apology, no mention of the car, the money, or the lies. Just blame. I folded the letter neatly and dropped it straight into the trash. Then I opened my phone and began the final phase of my freedom. I changed my number, closed my old email accounts, blocked every family contact, every mutual friend who'd helped spread their stories. I even sold the couch they always sat on when they came over to talk things out. I wanted nothing in my home that still echoed their presence. Days turned into weeks. And for the first time in years, peace didn't feel like absence. It felt like ownership. Evan noticed it too. You seem lighter, he said one night as we took Milo for a walk along the lake. I smiled faintly. That's what happens when you stop carrying other people's chaos. He squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. I know, I said quietly, but they'll never admit that. He stopped walking. You don't need them to. His words settled deep, like a truth I'd been circling my whole life. One evening, I ran into Jason at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. Your dad pretended not to know me, he said. Guess I'm out of favor now that I didn't play along. I nodded. That's how they work. Loyalty to them only lasts as long as you're useful. He sighed. You didn't deserve any of it, Wilma. I know, I said, but they needed to believe I did. A week later, my bank called. Ms. Bryant, the representative said, your father's name just triggered a security alert while attempting to access an account linked to yours. Would you like us to permanently unlink it? I didn't hesitate. Yes, permanently. When I hung up, I realized that was the very last thread connecting me to them. Gone. That night, I sat by the window as the city lights shimmered beyond the glass. Milo rested his head on my knee. My phone was silent, my house still. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the villain in their story. I felt like someone who had finally stepped out of it. As I drove across the bridge the next morning, the same one that led toward my new office and a life untouched by their shadows, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The sun was rising behind me, gold spilling over the horizon. My reflection looked different, stronger, certain. My voice echoed softly in the quiet of the car. They said I burned the bridge, but I only lit it enough to see what was following me. I gripped the wheel, smiled faintly, and whispered the words I'd been waiting to say for years. I'm not the villain. I'm not their savior. I'm done, and that's enough.